the hills of rural Kentucky, there was a family no one married into. Their name rarely appeared in courthouse ledgers, no records of weddings, no licenses filed. And yet the family grew. For generation after generation, children were born, without new surnames entering the line. They lived apart from the town, in cabins leaning into the mountains, their curtains drawn even in daylight. Locals whispered that their children were not born of strangers, nor of lawful unions, but of brothers and sisters sharing the same blood, a bloodline with no branches, a circle, a secret too disturbing to name aloud. By the late 1800s, school teachers grew suspicious. Students arrived with names that did not match the family Bibles. Birth years overlapped in ways that defied explanation. An older sister listed as mother, a younger brother marked father. It was as if the family erased and rewrote its own history, generation by generation, blurring the truth until no one could tell who was parent, who was child, who was sibling. Census takers, when they visited, often left blank spaces where surnames should be. Unclear relation, one recorded. But behind those blank spaces were bonds that broke every law of kinship, every commandment of the church. Visitors who dared approach the family's land spoke of the silence that surrounded it. No dogs barked, no children played outside. Windows were covered with cloth, nailed shut from the inside. At night, lanterns glowed faintly, and the sound of many voices could be heard, but always hushed, never laughing. A neighbor once claimed he saw 3 girls standing on the porch, each one heavily pregnant. He swore their faces looked nearly identical, their eyes wide and unblinking, their expressions drained of life. He never returned to the property again, and when he reported what he saw, the sheriff told him, "Best not to repeat it. Some things ain't meant for the record." In 1912, a county clerk discovered a string of birth certificates, all tied to the same surname. What unsettled him most was that the listed mothers and fathers were almost always recorded as siblings. Some certificates carried a faint pencil mark, invalid entry. Others were locked away in a drawer and never filed. Years later, when the courthouse caught fire, those very documents were among the first to burn. Locals claimed it wasn't an accident, that someone had chosen what to save and what to erase. But for those who lived nearby, no fire could cleanse the truth. They still saw the children, pale, silent, with eyes that seemed too wide, as if waiting for someone to ask the questions nobody dared put on paper. By the 1930s, stories spread through the valley of children who all looked alike. Not merely family resemblance, something more uncanny. Round faces, hollow cheeks, and eyes ringed with darkness. Teachers who tried to enroll them in school said they never spoke above a whisper. Some could not read or write. Many sat with their heads lowered, as though afraid of being seen. And yet when they glanced up, the look was unforgettable. Eyes, without warmth, blank as mirrors, reflecting something no outsider could understand. "They don't have expressions like other children," one teacher said. "It's as if they're waiting to be told who they are." The remark was struck from the official school report, but neighbors remembered. As the years passed, the family became a shadow people. They farmed only enough to survive. They traded with no one. Outsiders who wandered too close often turned back after a single glance at the family compound. Sagging porches, crumbling roofs, the smell of damp wood and smoke. The siblings turned parents rarely spoke to strangers. When they did, their words were clipped, unfinished, heavy with an accent no one else shared. The silence was worse than the words. Some claimed it felt like stepping into another world. One, where time stopped, where children became mothers before their voices had even changed, where bloodlines never reached beyond their own fences, a place where the past kept folding in on itself over and over again. In 1947, a county physician was sent up the mountain after reports of sickness spreading through the family. What he found was unlike anything in his medical records. Children born with twisted spines, infants whose eyes never opened, adults with faces that seemed worn down by decades of malnutrition, though their fields lay fertile. He wrote a single line in his ledger, "The blood is too close." The entry was never filed in official records. Weeks later, the doctor moved, counties without notice. His replacement refused to visit the hollow at all. "Let them be," he reportedly told the board. "Some things are better left unseen." Census takers who climbed into the valley often returned with incomplete lists. Entire households would vanish between surveys, as if erased. Some children appeared on one year's roll, then were gone the next, their graves unmarked, their names forgotten. The pattern became so strange that federal workers stopped asking questions. A handful of documents still survive, scrawled in faded ink. The same family name repeated over and over, stretching across columns like a stain. Those papers were quietly filed away under irregular, but the locals kept their own records, whispered, from one generation to the next. "Don't marry into that family," mothers warned their sons. "Don't go near their daughters." By the 1960s, only a few voices remained. One man, said to be both uncle and brother to half the children, spoke to a traveling preacher. The story he told was fragmented, but chilling. "It was never meant to be," he said. "But once it started, it couldn't stop. We were born into it." When pressed, he refused to explain further. Days later, the preacher returned to the hollow. The man was gone. Neighbors claimed he'd been buried quietly in the family plot. No marker, no ceremony, only the sound of shovels in the dark. After that, no one outside the family ever heard their voices again. Today, the hollow lies nearly empty. Cabins rot into the soil, vines curl over the porches where generations once sat, staring silently at passing strangers. But some say the family never truly left. That scattered descendants still walk among us, carrying the same dark eyes, the same blurred features, the same silence. The records remain broken, the graves remain nameless, and the story remains unfinished. A line of blood, folded in on itself too many times, disappearing into history, like a shadow with no end.